What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you guys want to support the channel, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. When you sign up, you'll get a free $15 to spend on some magic cards, and then additionally, you'll be supporting the channel whenever you do that. Additionally, you can become a patron. You will get to vote weekly on a weekly voted patron Deck Tech, and you'll be again supporting the channel when you do that. Special shout out to my high contributing patrons, Newsome, you rock. Now let's get into today's Deck Tech with Felix 5 Boots, and this guy's extremely powerful. He's going to double up on all of our abilities that trigger whenever we deal combat damage. So now Toski and Orin Frostfang are going to draw us double cards. If we can give creatures double strike, their combat damage triggers will trigger up to 4 times. It's kind of just an insane deck, and what tied it all together was actually using equipment. So now all of our creatures with broken combat abilities have equipment to make them extremely hard to block. Additionally, the swords of X and Y's will trigger additional times. So this guy just generates a ton of value. What's going to set this guy apart from your regular Voltron strategy is it's going to be very easy to generate an unstoppable board state with him, so you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket like normal. We're going to have Scepter of Celebration, we have Wand of Orcus, we're running Lathril, we have Turvagon. Just there's a lot of ways to generate an instant board state out of nowhere in this deck. And then from there, we're generating our value with our Orin Frostfang and Toski effects. So if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's get into it. The first thing we're going to cover is the combat damage triggers we're going to be doubling up on. Malcolm's going to be amazing. We get to double up on that loot effect, and then additionally, it's only going to take us 2 combats to start cheating things into play with that chorus ability. Thought Adele, now a lot of people are playing the One Ring and everybody's playing Soul Ring. So now we're going to steal up to 2 artifacts from them every time we deal combat damage with this girl. It's going to be super funny to grab their Soul Ring and then a Signet, and then you can use the Soul Ring to cast the Signet. She's just going to be very flexible and steal a ton of artifacts. Oh, here, Calcium is going to be amazing. Doubling up on that triggered ability is just broken, cheating 2 creatures into play. Additionally, there's a lot of ways to buff this guy up in this deck, and he's just going to dig us super deep. Aberrant's just super solid removal. He replaces himself if we can trigger his Ravenous ability, and then we start stripping away people's artifacts and enchantments. Scion of Calamity, I kind of thought this was a funny card in the deck. Now we're going to get rid of everybody's artifacts and enchantments. That Myriad ability kind of messed up on this card. This guy is a 5/5, so he's not going to be the easiest to block, and then additionally, we do have equipment that can buff his power up and other ways to buff his power, so yes, this card can just be really hard for our opponents to deal with. Let's talk about Conclave Sledge Captain. This guy's absolutely insane in this deck, and it's for a couple reasons. One, we can split that backup ability amongst 3 creatures, and then our commander is going to go ahead and double up on that backup ability, essentially doubling 3 creatures we have on the battlefield's power. Now, another thing we could do is we could put all 3 of those instances of backup abilities on 1 creature. So if we threw 3 +1/+1 counters on our commander and gave him all 3 instances of that backup ability, he's going to get trample ×3, and he's going to get whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put that many 1/1 counters on it, ×3 additionally. And now what's going to happen as well is each of those backup abilities will trigger separately. This means that our commander is going to double up on each of them, so we will go ahead and get 6 triggers of this whenever we deal combat damage with our commander. Assuming our commander wasn't blocked and he gets the full 8 damage through, we're going to put a total of 48 counters on him, giving him a total of 56 power. Now, we do have double strike in the deck, so I went ahead and did the math if this happened with double strike, getting us 12 triggers, and that math comes out to 392 power. Just kind of broken. Anyway, moving on, we have Schema Thief. This guy's going to be super solid for stealing our opponent's artifacts. Another thing he's going to do, he's going to prevent our opponent from playing any of their good artifacts while he's on the battlefield, so maybe you never see that One Ring. Silent Blade Oni is also super messed up in this deck. Not only is he essentially discard, but we get to cast those spells, so we're stealing our opponent's value, ruining their entire game plan, and chipping away at their hand at the same time. He's not a very nice card, but he's a very good card in this deck, especially when we're doubling up on that trigger. It's just not okay. Springleaf Avenger is a little more fair. It's just going to return cards from our graveyard. Very good, especially when we can do that up to 2 times a turn. Old Gnawbone is just going to generate limitless amounts of treasure in this deck. There is a lot of ways to draw cards in this deck, and there's a ton of very explosive card advantage in this deck, so we do need enough mana to cast all those spells, and Old Gnawbone's going to make sure that we can easily do that. Lathril is going to be seeing play here. Remember, the goal of this deck is to suit our commander up with one of those equipments that generates a ton of creatures whenever it deals combat damage, and Lathril just already does that, but we have to suit her up with equipment that buffs her up instead. But this deck has a lot of that, and additionally, our commander doesn't care if he deals the combat damage, so we're going to be doubling up on all of the swords X and Y's abilities, whether our commander deals damage with it or Lathril deals damage with it. That's why this deck is so flexible. Turvagon, same exact thing. This guy's very flexible, really messed up with Old Gnawbone on the battlefield, and yeah, he does replace himself with that Ravenous ability. Orochi Soul Reaver and Grim Hireling are very good cards in this deck. Grim Hireling can net us up to 12 treasure tokens a turn, assuming we connect with all 3 of our opponents. That's already busted enough. She's amazing removal. Orochi Soul Reaver, kind of the same thing. We can only generate up to 6 treasure tokens with him. Boo-hoo, right? And then additionally, we can manifest up to 6 cards, generating us a board state. That way we can consistently trigger his ability. Yes, these cards are just going to perform amazingly well in this deck. Tyranid Harridan is just an instant board state on a body. Now, it takes a little bit for him to get going, but once he deals 1 combat damage, we get 2 Tyranids, and then next turn, that's 3, so we're going to get 9. It's just a very snowbally creature that can really generate an instant board state pretty quickly if our opponents don't deal with it. The Pride of Conclave, you guys are probably asking yourselves, what are you doing, Deck Tech? This guy is not going to be that great here, but honestly, this is not only a big butts matters commander. This guy can be used in any strategy where you are trying to buff up the toughness or power of your creatures, and that's exactly what this deck wants to do. I mean, even on its base, let's talk about dealing combat damage with our commander, since he's going to be very hard to block, right? He has 4 toughness. With this guy's ability paired with our commander's ability, that's going to draw us a total of 8 cards. And that's the absolute floor of this guy. If we can actually get the Pride of Conclave to connect, he's going to draw us 30 cards. Ornn Frostfang, Toski, and Gix are going to be amazing card advantage pieces. Yes, our opponents kind of get some value off of Gix, but the fact that they're attacking and leaving themselves open is actually a plus for us. And then additionally, he's just an amazing mana sink for our stuff like Old Gnawbone or even Grim Hireling when we have an excess of treasure tokens. Gonti, Canny, Inquisitor, now we can have more ways to steal our opponent's cards. This guy's going to synergize amazingly with the deck. We have Kodama of the West Tree. Again, we have a lot of modified creatures in this deck, mostly because of the equipment and less so because of the counters, but the counters do come into play at some point. So getting 2 lands whenever our creatures deal combat damage instead of 1 can really catapult us ahead of our opponents. Arcane Heist, Stolen Identity, these are Cypher spells. Now, Cypher does put itself on a creature, so these will actually trigger additional times. So the turn we cast them, we're going to get an additional cast off them, and these are just going to provide a ton of value for us over the course of a game. Let's talk about some of the equipment that has combat damage triggers. Scepter of Celebration and Wand of Orcus can generate an instant board state. Remember, our commander does have 5 power at base, so if our commander deals combat damage with Scepter of Celebration, we get 14 creatures, and with Wand of Orcus, we get 10. Sword of Hearthenholm is going to provide some insane value. Netting 2 basics a turn is huge, and then additionally, we do have a couple very impactful ETBs in the deck. Not very many ETBs, but the ones that we do have just are very impactful. Sword of Fortune Frontier, digging 4 cards deep every turn and putting 2 additional lands into play every turn just seemed like a no-brainer, especially when this deck can produce a lot of mana, ensuring that we will be able to cast those cards from exile. Sword of War and Peace made the list because of one of my pet cards, Baylor. It makes me think I was wrong about this card all these years. Now, especially when we double up on this, assuming someone has 7 cards in their hand, we're dealing 14 14 damage to their face and gaining 14 life, yeah, we're gonna take that. Mask of the Schemer is going to be insane. It's not only going to buff our commander up a ton, but additionally, it's just going to rifle us through our deck at an insane rate. Mask of Memories is also very good here. We're gonna draw 4 cards and only have to discard 2, again, getting us to our key pieces very fast. Power Fist is amazing here. We do have Double Strike in the deck, so in a scenario where we do have Double Strike and Power Fist, we attack with our commander, deals the combat damage, we throw 5 counters on it, nope, just kidding, 10 counters because of our commander, and then we're gonna go ahead and deal another 15 damage to their face, putting another, you guessed it, 30 counters on our commander. Now our commander has 45 power and they just took 20 commander damage to the face. The key to the vault is insane. It basically turns any of your creatures into O'Here, but you get to cast any card instead of just a creature. I don't know what they were thinking with this card, but with our commander and doubling up on it, we get to cast 2 cards per turn for free. Yeah, we're gonna take that. Umezawa's Jit, not only does this buff our commander up a ton, additionally it is going to massacre the board. Really controlling the board with this is not very hard, especially when we're doubling up on all of those counters. It's just going to be a very powerful piece in this deck. Mark of Sakiko, again a very powerful card. This with our commander on the battlefield. On our commander will net us 10 mana a turn. That doesn't empty, kind of busted. Biden of Thassa, not really an equipment, but again, it's just another solid way to draw a ton of cards with our commander and a decent board state. Moving on to the core of the deck, we do have some double strike equipment with Brass Knuckles and Fire Shrieker. Now, notably, Brass Knuckles can be put on 2 different creatures. As long as they're both equipped, they will still get double strike. Alpha Authority is going to make our commander unblockable and additionally give him hexproof. That way he's really hard for our opponents to deal with. Canopy Covers does exactly the same thing. Strongback and Hammer of Nizan is just going to lower the cost of all the equipment and all of the auras we target our commander with. Trophy Mage is going to be an insane card in this deck. The first thing we're going to grab is Sword of Hearth and Home, and then from there we can tutor like 90% of our equipment because 90% of them have 3 CMC, and you're going to get to blink her 2 times a turn the way that our commander works with Sword of Hearth and Home. So this girl can single-handedly get all of your key equipment onto the battlefield. Anchor to Reality just grabs us whatever equipment we need at the time. The Mimeoplasm, I really like this here as a sort of recursion piece. Additionally, the Mimeoplasm is just super fun, and he just synergizes perfectly with combat triggers because he becomes a copy of whatever creature we want him to become a copy of. Savor the moment. Now, there's a lot of scenarios where you have a 50 power commander and you create 50 creatures out of nowhere with something like a Scepter of Celebration, right? And then you just pass the turn. That does not feel right. Now, you know I don't like extra turn spells, but this is basically an extra combat spell that draws you a card. So this is definitely a-okay in my book, and that's how we're going to use it. It's going to essentially give all of those 50 tokens haste so we can kill our opponents instead of letting them all have one last turn. Beastmaster's Ascension is also going to see play in this deck. Now, it synergizes really well with Scepter and Wand of Orcus because, again, our commander has 5 power, we get 5 creatures, it takes 7 to trigger Beastmaster's Ascension. It's going to be super easy to trigger in this deck. Invasion of Ikoria is also going to see play here. The tutor is very nice and very powerful, but honestly, I just want that giant dinosaur to ensure that all of our combat damage triggers are actually getting through. Aside from that, there's a few interaction pieces I wanted to talk about, like Glen Elendra Archmage and Siren Stormtamer. Not only are these going to protect our commander and our strategies, additionally, there are some evasive creatures that can trigger some of our combat damage triggers. Mandate of Abaddon is also going to be kind of like a one-sided board wipe in this deck because of how big our commander is going to be. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying these deck techs. I would like to thank my patrons, Excessum, Newsome, Chicken Salad, and Praetor. You guys are amazing. Really keep the channel going. I couldn't appreciate you enough. With that being said, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.